redundant. They've already given us something to think about.
Didn't know. Only Father God knows.
George Frederick Handel. Name sound familiar?
Yep.
In a story written by John Maxwell in the book Feeling Forward, he gives a story. Handel was a composer. He was a musical prodigy. At the age of 17, he was an organist in a cathedral in Huddle, the place of his birth. By 19, he was a violinist and harpsichordist at Kaiser's Opera House in Hamburg, Germany. And at 21, he was in the company and was a conductor to the Elector of Hanover, later George I, King of England. He was in his prime, and he moved to England because of George I. But English audiences were different, and he did not do as well in England as he did in Germany. Many people did not come to his performances, and people did not receive his music as well as they had earlier. He became somewhat despondent, and he actually was penniless. He also suffered a stroke and lost much of the use of his right side and his right hand. Dejected, down, broke, he thought he might be destined to live in a pauper's prison for the rest of his life. He actually considered suicide, this musical prodigy. Then a friend name of what's his name? Lost it here somewhere. Charles Jennings brought a libretto to him, a libretto about the life of Christ. And when he had Christ before him again, he suddenly felt rejuvenated. In 22 days, he wrote a composition. And in 2 more days, he wrote the music to that composition. A 240-page Otis called The Messiah. And he has been famous, along with the Messiah, ever since. His whole world changed when Christ was brought back before him. 2,000 years before that, 11 journeymen, itinerant and illiterate laborers were dejected. They were lost. Because the man they had followed for 3 years had been put to death. And they thought their whole life was over. Everything they had thought about and planned for and had been promised was gone. Even when he came back after the crucifixion, they still did not believe what had happened. They still were not aware of the whole scenario of what was going on. But then they saw Christ before them go up to heaven, ascend, and their whole world changed. In a book called The Triumph of Christianity, Bart Ehrman wrote this: "A few illiterate day laborers in a remote part of the Roman Empire changed the world." He wrote this, "The ancient triumph of Christianity proved to be the single greatest cultural transformation our world has ever seen. Without it, the entire history of late antiquity would not have happened as it did. We would never have had the Middle Ages, the Reformation, the Renaissance, or modern eternity as we know it. There could never have been a Matthew Arnold, any of the Victorian poets, any of the other authors of our canon, no Milton, no Shakespeare, no Chaucer. We would never have had Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, or Rembrandt. None of our composers, Mozart, Handel, or Bach. Our world would be incalculably different. And this happened because the Roman world was a culture of dominance. Those with power are expected to put their will over those who are weaker. Rulers are to dominate their subjects, patrons their clients, masters their slaves, men their women. This ideology still exists in many parts of the world. But with such ideology, one would not expect to find government welfare programs to assist weaker members of society like we have. The poor, the homeless, the hungry, the oppressed. One would not expect to find hospitals to attend to the sick, injured, or dying. One would not expect to find private institutions of charity designed to help those in need. Without the Christian Revolution, none of these would have existed. The Roman world did not have such things. Christians advocated a different ideology. Leaders of the Christian church preached and urged an ethic of love and of service. One person was no more important than the other. All were on the same footing before God. The master no more significant than the slave, the patron and the client, the husband than the wife, the powerful than the weak, or the robust more than the diseased. The Christian's church started with morality and ethics and changed the world. Edward Gibbon, who wrote The Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire, conceded these 5 points. The spiritual superiority and God's personal oversight did this, along with an inflexible and determined skill of the Christians, and a doctrine of immortality, which the Romans did not have, miracles, strict morality, and a good organization. Jesus had put before them the simple idea of going out and preaching the gospel to the world. Putting Jesus before the world. And the 3 simple words of wait for the Holy Spirit, pray incessantly, and stay united. The 3 words that the church has lost a great deal of. Handel wrote his Messiah because Christ was put before him. 12 ignorant, uneducated laborers changed the world because Christ was put before them. It's time we put Christ before us again. Amen. And witness. Amen. Testify. Amen. And witness. That's something to think about. Amen.